Hey there, Mike here with Feeling Twisty. I'm really glad you're here. And I'm excited about my guest today, my good friend Jerry Emeka. Jerry, welcome to Feeling Twisty. I'm so glad you were able to. I know you're a busy guy, but I'm glad you made time for me.
Oh man, Mike, it's my pleasure, man. I'm looking forward to the conversation we're gonna have. We've had many conversations through time, and when you started doing these interviews, I was like, I wonder when he's gonna ask me.
You were on my
But
list. Yeah. And even Tony Doyle had suggested you, but you were already on my plan to get on here. So
nice.
I really, the reason that there was a delay, because I thought yours and Tony's big Hawaii event was happening a few weeks ago. So I
Mm.
didn't want to bother you ahead of that, when I knew you were going to be busy. But it's actually not until what, the beginning of May or end of May? End of May, beginning of June.
Well, believe it or not, we're actually moving the date to August. We're moving it
Oh,
to the end of August, yeah, because there's just some issues going on our end, and so we decided to push it back to the end of summer. We're
oh,
playing.
that's
We're
cool.
so Yeah. We're living in the end, so we're not trying to force anything to happen that isn't supposed to happen. We're trying to build something that's bigger than one event type of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's cool. Well, since
yeah.
we're talking about it, what is the event that we're dancing
Ah,
around here? Tell us about it.
yeah. The Creative Visionary Retreat. It's kind of it's an opportunity for folks that have um, ideas that they want to bring out to the world, or bring out to their team, or bring out to their family, um, but don't necessarily have the support or the other visionaries to help them like suss it out and till the soil, as I like to call it. So it's an opportunity for like-minded individuals to come together with ideas. So it's those folks that have an idea that they want to bring out, and then they bring it up to their family and they're like, "That's dumb," right? And they're like, "Oh, okay." And then they just kind of put it in the background and they focus on everything else, but it's still in the back of their mind. I wish I could do this thing. Well, Tony and I are both creatives. As you know, Mike, I'm a former actor, producer, writer. I also used to do ideations for big corporations and things like that. So it's a skill set that I have that I think is super helpful. And, as manifestors, we know that we don't need anybody to help us do this, that, and the other. But the fact
Right.
of the matter is, when we're traveling in the 3D world, working with people is how we get these ideas to come to light. So it's an opportunity for a creative to come in, have a total vacation, but also make it super productive. So that's what the whole creative visionary retreat is all about.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Hmm.
And I think some people hear that and think, well, I'm not a creative.
Mm,
I don't have a business. I don't have this or that. I'm a homemaker, or I
yeah,
do this job that doesn't really fit into that. But this fits everybody. We're all creators.
there you go. There it is. Exactly right. And thank you for nailing that. Yeah, a lot of times when I bring this up with people, they're like, "Well, I'm not a creative. I don't draw. I don't write." I'm like, "Man, I think that your neighborhood accountant is super creative. I can't do anything with an Excel spreadsheet. But man, you go
Yeah.
and have a conversation with my brother. This dude has colors and like tabs and things and all this stuff. I'm like, how'd you do that? And he's just like, I don't know, I just created it. Right? So
Yeah.
if you're a homemaker, you're a homeschooler, you're a community leader, you're none of those things. You're just a guy who just likes to make trains. What the way I like to put it is, if you put clothes on your back today, you're creative. You went to the
Yeah.
store and you said, man, that shirt would look good on me, and you picked it. That is a creative act. Everyone is creative. You know, you create systems to make your life easier. You create experiences in your relationships. Even your everyday relationships is creative. Everything you do is creative. So if you have an idea of something you want to create in your life, whether it's you want to change your wardrobe or you want to create the next big billion-dollar brand, it's all the same creative act. It's all this. Well, it's not the same creative act. It's the same creative power. So
Yeah.
that's what the retreat is for: is to give you the space to bring these stagnant ideas that you have out. So we can bring. How do I put it? I say you bring your idea, we till the soil, and we bring a sprout out that you can now take back to your people, and it can grow into whatever it is meant to be.
Oh, I like that. So,
hmm
for those interested, how do they sign up for this? Where do they go?
Well, they can find me on Instagram at human.imagination. Send me a DM and I'll send you the link. You can also find me on Facebook as well at Jerry Emeka. If you contact me, I will give you the information and all that stuff. I can't remember the website off the top of my head because it's a whole long link or whatever. But the best way to contact me if you want more information is just hit me up in the DMs and I'll get you all the information you need.
Cool. Okay, we mentioned at the beginning of this that we've known each other for a good while, and we've
hmm
had some wonderful conversations. So I know a lot about you. I
hmm
want our listeners and viewers to get a little taste of Jerry, where you come from, how you got to where you are now in
hmm
Hawaii. So let's go back to 2014 when I know things started changing as far as the spiritual side, even though I'm kind of getting away from the word spiritual, that heaviness of that, but
Mm.
let's call it that. This new journey, this breaking of the shell, peeling back the layers.
That's how I would probably describe it. I mean, I still call it spiritual. I don't mind calling it spiritual, but I call it a spiritual awakening amongst many. But this was the one when I realized that there was something way bigger going on than I knew. Up until 2014, I was one of those people pleasing, um, following the masses, and then let me do this so I can get that, and all that type of stuff. And it basically put me into a position where I didn't trust myself and I didn't trust others, and I was making decisions that proved that. And then in 2014, I came to discover Wayne Dyer in this one talk he was giving, and he talked about the Tao Te Ching and this gentleman named Neville. And it piqued my interest, and the next day I ended up buying the Tao Te Ching from the Barnes and Noble in Union Square. I'll never forget it. And I buy it. I walk out, and there's this shaman who's literally looking right at me, smiling from ear to ear. And I'm like, who are you smiling at, me? And he's like, yeah. And we ended up having this conversation that was super deep, the deepest conversation I'd ever had up until that point. And I was just blown away. And I told him about how I just bought the Tao Te Ching. I just found Wayne Dyer. And he's like, oh, you're perfect. It looked like you just started your journey and this and the other. And anyways, cutting so much story out of it, down the road, a couple months later, I go back into listening to this lecture, and he's talking about Neville again. And I decide to look into this Neville guy, and I hear this 19-minute audio about imagination creating reality, and about this girl who was crying about the loss of her father, and decided that they weren't the salt of her tears, but the spray of the ocean. And I was like, what? Oh, okay. And I mean, that was it for me. I had to know more. I had to discover more. And he said that there would be a hunger that would come across you. I was like, bro, I'm hungry. Let's go. And and it's just been like that ever since. And I've just been now the last 10 years has just been me trying to discover more and more about this imagination and how to use it and how I've been
Yeah.
using it. And like you said before the recording, it's like realizing that God isn't outside of us. And in fact that God isn't some being, it's just not some being external. It actually is the essence of who I am. It is the
Yeah.
essence of who I am, meaning it is who I am, not in an egotistical way, which is what
Right.
I've been dealing with over the last 10 years. Like, if I am God, like, isn't that like bad? Isn't that blasphemous? And doesn't that make me this or that? No. I've come to discover it's not just that I'm God, so are you. So is my son, or, so are my son, my wife, my family, my friends, my neighbors, the people I don't like, the people I do like. They're all the same I am. And that probably was one of the more profound things I've discovered in the last 10 years. Now, the utilization of this knowledge is a completely different story. But yeah, that's where it all comes from. Hold on a sec. Hello, there's a crying baby on a microphone.
That's okay. I miss that. I miss having kids crying. With our 5 kids, they're all grown now. So I kind of miss those moments when you hear them in the background crying. One
Yeah.
day I'll have grandkids. Yeah, so this God thing, uh,
Hmm.
I think it's uh, when I first started. I started hearing Neville, I'm like, oh, I'm God, I'm God, and then I think we all go through this. I'm God, I'm God, and then we start to realize what the idea of God, what that is, expands, and it's because we first think of God like we hear about the God we heard about and read about in the Bible, and then we get to this point where there's this expansion where it's like, oh, it's even bigger than my idea of God, because that's just a word that we created, and I think all of us go through this. Every a layer gets peeled back. I know for me, I think I got it, and then, oh, what? So, and I know you're on that same type of journey where you get to a point like, yeah, and then, oh man, another layer peels back, and like Neville said, there's a limit to contraction. We think we're
Mm.
small and separate, and then there's no limit. So I got an idea. I got an idea of who I am. I got this. Oh, what? I'm even bigger than that, and then it's bigger than
Yeah.
that, and it's you can't really put it into words that and what that feels like, And to say I'm bigger than my idea of God. From 10 years ago, I never would have said that. I would have thought that's blasphemous.
Hmm.
But when you start letting go of what your idea of God is and realize there's this whole thing about good and evil and judgment is all coming from within us, and that when we've heard that God is love, like, I
Yeah, I don't
am
know what that
love.
means. I don't even know what love means. I really don't.
Yeah.
because because growing up, we were taught what love is by movies and
Right.
church, and it always ended up boiling down to some subjective idea of, well, if you don't do this, you don't love me. And I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
what? That I'm now coming to a place to where it's like is this thing you're talking about a universal that will apply to different areas that don't include me? In other words, is this love something that would have existed before Christ, right? Like in the Grecian times, right? Or in the Syrian time. Is this idea that I have still applicable 3,000 years from now as it was 3,000 years ago? And to me, that it has to be something universal. And that's why I love what Neville teaches, because it's like it's as simple as I am. It's unsullied, it's untouched, it can't be messed with. Everything else is secondary. So if I'm finding myself quote unquote unloved, that's literally my own human interpretation of what is going on. Love is not even, it's not definable, which is why I love the Tao Te Ching, because it says the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. As soon as I give it a label, it ceases to be that thing I'm calling it, right? And how I
Yeah.
know this is, and this is about the universal. He's not a toddler yet. I don't know when the age of a toddler begins, but he's 16 months old, and just the way he bees in the world, I'm like, that's love, because it's untouched. Like, it's not until we teach him things that he gets this idea of how solid this world is, this 3D world is. But before that, it's nothing. I want that. I'm going there. Oh, that's delightful. That's not delightful. I don't think he's thinking to himself, oh, this is love, or this is not love. He's thinking this feels good or this doesn't feel good. That's it, if he is thinking anything. But as he's learning words, and I know he is because we're teaching him sign language,
Oh, good.
he he wants his food, let's just say, for example, right? He wants that food. And I've already given him 2 bananas. If I give him a third banana, he's going to get constipated, but he doesn't know that, right? So I have to tell him no, but now he's freaking out. But the essence of him wants what he wants and loves what he loves and all this type of stuff. And it's our interactions that makes him try to decide what is and what isn't love. But me not giving him that third banana isn't love, or is or isn't love. It just is what's happening. But the essence of who he is and who I am is all there is. That is love. And you know how you say, like, oh, you don't use the word spirituality. I'm like, I'm questioning even using the word love. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
love is all there is. I'm like, what does that mean?
Right. Yeah, I
So,
agree with you. Everything what I say, I was telling someone last night that I worship no man, because the discussion of Neville came up, and in debating what Neville meant about this and what about and techniques, and I said, I don't care. I'm bigger than Neville, and so are you. And Neville is part of the story, so's Mike. And this is just all in the story. Road signs reflecting who we are as we take this highway. It's another metaphor. All of it's metaphor.
exactly.
And all of the stuff that the scriptures that Neville used, metaphor. It's all symbolic, telling us who we are.
Yeah.
And when you can let go of the religion of it, it's freeing. The heaviness of religion. And Neville can become, and people make Neville a religion. Oh, it's this way. You have to do this. You have to do it this way. And if you really listen to Neville, that never says that. He says, do what's most comfortable for you. But it comes down to you just deciding what you want, assuming that you have it,
That's it.
So I used to be, I'd gotten into this whole, I gotta learn everything Neville said. I prided myself on. I was a Pharisee with Neville. I was like, well, no, Neville said this. People would message me, Mike, where does Neville say this? I'm like, oh, I can tell you. And in my mind, pull up the lecture. Go to this lecture. I just wore myself out worrying about what Neville said when it doesn't matter. That you're bigger than that, and I'm bigger than that. And any success story you hear is still part of the story. And you're going to do bigger and better things because you're all
even your own
encompassing.
stories, even your
Right.
own success stories. Because, see, look, I'm also a Neville encyclopedia. I'm probably a Pharisee of Neville as well. I mean, I think, if I run into people who want something or desiring something, and I'm able to help them on the spot, I help them. I imagine
Yeah.
for them. But if they keep coming back, I send them to Neville because I'm like, there was no teacher that helped me more than him. That's the reason
Right.
why I love Neville, is because he was a great teacher. Not
Exactly.
because of anything other than that, but who created the teacher? I am,
Right.
right? So, in a way, you could get really esoteric with this and start realizing that, wait a minute, Neville never actually existed.
Right.
He literally is a figment of my imagination. To do what, though? To point me back to the truth of who I am.
Yeah.
That's it. So to me, whether it's Neville or Wayne Dyer or Joe Dispenza or your local preacher, whoever it is, their job and the essence of why you created them in the first place was to wake up to who you actually are, which is why I love his lecture, The Pearl of Great Price. Because once you
Yeah.
sell all beliefs, not just some of them,
All
all
of them.
beliefs, what else do you have left? You got nothing except for I am. How do you know that? Because that's all there is. If you didn't exist, none of this would exist. And
It gets
it's hard.
yeah. Because you go back, I had the same realization that Neville never was here, and I think we talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
Neville never was here separate from me, and nothing is separate from my own awareness of it. And I like this. It's a metaphor, but I've mentioned it a few times. You're on this highway, this journey, this adventure that you've created, and you come to all these signposts telling you, reflecting who you are. And then you get to some that really fascinate you, like Neville or some other teacher. And instead of taking it and keep going, like, okay, yeah, let's keep exploring that. I pulled over. Let's take the exit. Let me just sit here. But for me, that it's not meant to be that way. At least in my experience. Keep going, see what's happening, hear what Neville says, apply it, and it always comes back to self. And personally, that was my personal thing, and I'm not going to get into all of mine. My whole religiosity of making Neville a religion, and then letting all of that go. I want to get back to you. So you've got this. That's 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This was before you met Stephanie, correct? This is back. Okay, so let's jump a little ahead now. Let's go to this really great story. If you in Chicago, and I remember you calling me, and you were talking about, I want to go to Hawaii. I don't know if I should do it or not. Let's jump to that story.
That was not the conversation. The conversation more went along the lines of, I'm moving to Hawaii, and I don't know
true.
if I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
Because because it wasn't a want being to move to Hawaii. In fact, the story goes like this. Okay, so I've been studying. This was in 2020, so lockdowns are going on, and crime is on the rise in Chicago. And for a couple of years, my wife and I had been talking about living rurally, like just doing the homesteading thing, getting away from the city, just easy, simple life type thing. and we weren't making any moves on it. Then 2020 happens, lockdowns, whatever your political beliefs are. My political beliefs and opinions are, I'm a libertarian, George Carlin, like government get out of my backyard type of person, right? I'm a sovereign being. Yeah. And Chicago was definitely not that. And so I was like really ready to get out, but not knowing how. And and then crime was on the rise. So crime is on the rise in my city. It's literally knocking on our door, really knocking on our door. And I'm like, man, what am I imagining? What's going on? And our catalytic converter gets stolen. A friend of ours' daughter gets carjacked. There's 15 shots fired in front of this like private school, like around the corner from our house. Antifa is like protesting like every weekend in our neighborhood. And then the final straw was a bullet comes through our window. Had my wife not gotten up 5 minutes prior to this bullet coming, it would have gone right through her shoulder, right through her. I was like, that's it. And I called one of my mentors up, Lyndall, and was like, dude, I can't live here anymore. I don't want to do this. And he told me, well, why don't you go home? And I was like, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean? He's like, go home. He's like, okay, do this. Do what I did. You literally go into the closet, shut the door. And I was like, okay. So I would put blindfolds over my eyes and put earplugs in my ears. And I would just sit in the silence and just, I am home, I am home, I am home. And I did that for about a month and a half. And then I had a vision of my son playing on some rocks. And I could feel tropical wind on my imaginal cheeks. And I could see my knees. And it was lovely. And I was like, that's it. And it felt so good. And I let it go. And I didn't think anything of it. Other than it's done, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't, go searching. I didn't do anything like that. And then a month after that vision, I wake up on January 8th. It was my wife's birthday. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking that I lived in Hawaii.
Ooh.
And I was like, no, it's cold ass Chicago. What am I, I grab my phone to check the time. It's 3:30 and I see a notification on my phone that says one-way tickets to Honolulu for $99.
Yeah.
I was like, and my gut and my heart were like, hell yes. But my brain was like, what the hell are you doing? Stop right there. Stop taking it. Stop. And I just kept going. And I go into the living room. I'm sitting there and I buy three one-way tickets to Hawaii. I don't know anything about Hawaii, Mike. All I knew about Hawaii was that's a place that rich people go to. Like that's not a place that that's not on my bucket list. It's not on my bucket list. It's not one of those things that I ever considered being true. Remember, I'm thinking we're going to live on like a farm somewhere like North Carolina or Texas where I'm from, right? So anyways, so in that 6 weeks, I buy these tickets 6 weeks that are like 6 weeks later, and I end up telling my wife a couple hours later, hey, we're moving to Hawaii in 6 weeks. And happy birthday.
Yeah.
And we followed the vision. That's what I tell people. I followed the vision. We walked a whole bridge. I mean, part of my prayer was also something that was just bigger. It needed to be something that I could use to help me explain what Neville's talking about too. I couldn't rely on his stories or the stories of other people I knew online or anything like that. I needed my own version of Barbados.
Yep.
And so that's Hawaii. And now, so we moved to Hawaii. We didn't know anybody here. We didn't have the money to move out here. Like logically and rationally, it was the stupidest idea.
I remember our conversations.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So literally my friends who know the law were my biggest supporters because I knew I could call them and be like, look, I know I'm not making up what I saw. I just am having a hard time persisting in the knowing that it's done. And you
Yeah.
and Tony and Grant and Alessandra, Coach
Ah,
DeCarlo, these are all people that were just had my back, and my mentor Lyndall, um, all had my back through this and be like, it's done. And I'm like, okay, cool. Now I got it. Help me with my wife. So
yeah.
that was the hard part, right?
Yeah.
Because she allows me to know the law, right? But she doesn't necessarily practice it and all that stuff, which is fine. Um, but yeah, so when we got here, man, it was a crazy story. I mean, even the day before we we flew out, um, we wake up to find out that we had taken our COVID test too early, and
Oh, that's right. I remember
we
that.
had to retake yeah we had to retake the test, um, and we had to get the results before we flew out, and we were flying out first thing Monday morning, and we wake up Sunday morning to a call from our friend saying that, hey, y'all took the test too early. Y'all need to go take another test. It's Sunday. Everybody's closed. So that whole Sunday was supposed to be like our day off. We're supposed to relax with our in-laws, all that type of stuff. Nah, man. That was a stressful day, but it was also another testament to the imagination because despite the fact that the roads are covered in snow, despite the fact that every clinic was closed, despite the fact that we just couldn't get these tests, I just kept saying to myself, I'm in Hawaii. I'm already in Hawaii. It wasn't even I'm telling myself, no, I'm in Hawaii. Like
Yeah.
I literally had to be there. My son's crying in the background. My wife is pissed off and mad right next to me. You know, we're getting declined all the time on the phone. And we end up finding a Walgreens. We end up finding this Walgreens and we sneak in. I don't want to get into the whole story is so super convoluted,
Yeah.
but we end up getting this test at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, finally. And it was such a relief to take the test. But we weren't done because the test we took was a 24-hour test, meaning we weren't going to get the results before our flight in the morning. So we were still hunting for a place that we could get a rapid test. We couldn't find anything. It's 11:30 at night. We're in our hotel room in the airport hotel, and I'm on the phone with American Airlines. Home dude's like, it was my last attempt at anything. He said, no, we can't help you. I was like, all right, well. And I hung up the phone. I remember just being like, just relaxed. I'm just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm in Hawaii. I have nothing other than I'm in Hawaii. And I lay there and then I just hear my wife just laughing. And I'm like, what's so funny? She's like, Jerry, I've looked at this email or my email every half hour. Every half hour I've looked at this thing. This was not here. I was like, what wasn't here? We got our negative results like 3 hours after we took the test. Wait, excuse me, what? What do you mean? She's like, look, we got our negative. It was the most miraculous. It was more miraculous than the $99 thing because this was this was nuts. This was supposed
Right.
to be.
Shouldn't
We
have
weren't.
happened.
It
Right.
should not have happened.
Impossible.
It was impossible,
Yeah.
legitimately impossible. And so we got our results. We flew out first thing in the morning. Um, we get to Hawaii and we land late at night, get taken to the hotel. We're checking in, and then the folks at the hotel were like, "Hey, would y'all like to stay for an extra week?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I mean, we'll whatever." And she was like, "Oh no, no, it's free." I was like, "Wait,
Yeah. Impossible. Come on. Free in
impossible."
Hawaii?
Yeah.
That
So
doesn't
that
happen.
first week we already had points. It was like points that I had from like years ago that I had never redeemed. And we check in with so we had one free week and we were like, okay, this free week and we'll just be hunting for a place to live. they give us an extra week for free. So we had that extra week, and then we had just enough money to get an Airbnb for our third week. On our third week, we're really running out of juice, and these folks that we had met, again, long story, um, one of their employees overheard us lamenting about the fact that we can't find a place to stay. She was like, "Oh, y'all need to talk to this woman." And we are like, "Okay, whatever." Talk to this woman. Oh my God, she's still one of our good friends, and she's basically the de facto mayor of the town we live in. She says we can. She's like, I usually only do 3 month leases, but y'all sound sweet. Why don't y'all just come and stay with me stay at one of my places for a day? And if y'all like it, we'll talk about a week. And if y'all like that, we'll talk about long extended stay. Whatever, just give us
Yeah, we'll take it.
we'll take it. Whatever you got. And that's how we came to this town that we live in. And so we're now living in this town, and literally everybody loves us. We love them. As soon as we move in, my wife and my son started taking hula classes, and
Oh, cool.
just so many amazing things. And we signed this lease with this woman. It's great. And then my wife comes back one day. She's like, "Jerry, I found where we're going to live." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" She's like, I was like, "We just signed this lease." She's like, "No, you have to see it." So we go up into the upper part of the town where we now live, and we see this house. And I was like, "Stephanie, I saw this house 2 weeks ago." I said, "Whoever lives here is probably the most blessed people in the world."
Yeah.
And so it's like I fell in love with this
Man.
place before she saw it. She falls in love with it after I saw it, brings me to it. We, fall in love with the owner or the farm managers, and we've now lived here for 4 years. 4 years? 3 years. 3 years. May will be 3 years. And
Wow.
March is 3 years for Hawaii, but May will be 3 years for where we live now. And we've had an amazing time here. It's been amazing. Um, we live on the largest Mamaki tea farm in the world.
Wow.
Yeah, which is also a manifestation in and of itself. You know how like 2020 does the coffee game, right? Imagine sipping a cup of coffee. Well, I don't do coffee, I do tea. So I'd be imagining tea, but I wouldn't be getting tea. I would imagine like getting 3 cups of tea, but I was never manifesting it. And then one day, I think it was like a month after we moved in, like the realization that I lived on the largest tea farm,
Yeah.
it like came to me. So now we're here and we're doing our thing, and we're part of community now, and doing the thing. And I imagine for my neighbors and my friends, and we're having a good time. We're having a good time. That was a long
Looking
story.
back,
I need
no,
to
I
figure out a way to shorten that story.
no, it's a great story though. You can't if you shorten it, then you skip the all the impossibilities that
There were
happen.
so many. Dude, I skipped so many
I love that.
impossibilities.
If I don't, I'm not going to say I love the impossible things. I used to say that all the time, but then like, well, I don't have to keep doing the impossible. It's great to just, you know, ride the wave. But
let me say
you,
this about the impossible things.
yeah,
Let me say this about the impossible things. It's only impossible from the human point of view. From the if you will, the divine point of view, nothing's impossible,
right,
right? Um, and if it seems impossible and it doesn't come to pass, that's also fine because that's a bridge to something else. So, in my mind, even if none of this worked out, it would have still been fine because something was emerging anyways. So, there's and this was part of this manifestation in the first place, was me realizing that if it doesn't seem like it's going to work, it's fine. If it does work, it's fine. It's all fine. All you need to do, and this is what I struggled with during this trip, was living in the end and enjoying the process. I wasn't necessarily when I share the story with you guys, I'm not saying I necessarily was like, I definitely
Right.
wasn't, because ask Mike.
And when you
But I
look
was
back
still
at that,
in the end.
yeah, you could, and we all do this. I think once we had reach a point of a goal, and we look back like, man, it all worked out. I could have just been a lot easier, if I'd have just been cool and rode the wave, like I was saying. That usually comes in hindsight. Like, man, it worked out regardless of those moments of, oh shit, it still worked out. Exactly, even better than I could have imagined.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun to look back and think, wow, yeah, I could just as easily just been cool the whole time, and it all still would have worked out fine.
I do wonder about that, because I look back and I'm like, is that true?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's true. I don't know if I could have done
That
it
it wouldn't have worked out if you'd have been just laid back about it.
I don't know, because I didn't. Because, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because in hindsight, I didn't. I wasn't necessarily cool all the time. I was cool most of the time. I wasn't cool
Yeah.
all of the time. But I think about that day that we were trying to find that COVID test. I'm like, if we would have just gone to my in-laws and chilled with them, we would never have taken that test. You understand what I'm saying? Right? Like, if we didn't go that day looking to take the test, we couldn't have taken the test. But one could argue, well, if you wouldn't have done anything, maybe the airline would have just accepted the negative test that was a day too early. Who knows?
Right. We can overanalyze it.
Exactly.
But my point is, when we look back, the point I was trying to make is things work out even when we let things get to us, in spite of us getting stressed out.
Okay.
But when we look back, we think, oh, I could have. In hindsight, we see we could have just leveled off those stressful moments, knowing that it worked out. I'm not a big fan of analyzing it.
Right.
A friend of mine wants to talk often about, well, what about, I spent the day, I was worried yesterday. I felt lonely, or I was in this feeling, and I tell him, like, so you were lonely. Let it, just brush it off. It's not a big deal. But why? His favorite thing is, if I am God and I'm all powerful, then why is this and why don't I have that? I'm like, would you relax?
Yeah.
Please relax. And I told him to stop using God. Stop saying it, because you're identifying God as this idea you have, and it's bigger than that, and it's more beautiful than that. I think we all, in manifesting, we like to analyze. I do. Like, well, why was I thinking that? What led me to thinking? And then, like you say, well, if I'd gone here, maybe I wouldn't have done this, and then I wouldn't have done this. But none of these things that we do matter. None of it. That we still get to what we want. That we still get there, and there's no point in analyzing the mechanics of it, because the mechanics don't matter. Not one bit, because they have no power whatsoever. I just love how you were going to Hawaii. You're going to Hawaii. And
I'm in Hawaii. It wasn't I'm going.
You're in Hawaii.
That was the thing. I wasn't going to Hawaii. I was in Hawaii. Like, I really was.
Yeah. And just for the listeners, you can say, I'm not one that worries about tense. If I say I'm going, I'm going. I know what I mean. You can be. I want people to lighten up about worrying about. Oh, I didn't say I'm there. But I know I'm going there, because that doesn't matter. What matters is what you know inside, and
there it is. Yeah.
The words don't mean jack shit, because who's listening to the words? I used to think, well, if I don't, imagination needs to see my scene be perfect, or oh crap, did I just say I have it, or I'm going to have it?
Hmm.
Imagination's going to judge me. This separation, like there's something
Yeah.
separate. And in our own hearts, we know what we want. And when it comes down to it, if we just accept it, and for me, that's living in the end.
Yeah.
If I
Acceptance.
say I got this, but if I'm talking to Kim and I say it'll be here,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not concerned that. Well, I didn't tell her it's here. I said it will be here. Because I know what I mean, and the only power is this infinite. You can't even explain it. There's no words to explain the immensity of who we are. But it's just, yeah, no, I can't think of any good words to explain it. Everybody has to experience this for themselves. But for a manifesting thing,
Hmm.
let's talk about the whole trip to Hawaii. You mentioned it a number of times. You were living in the inn, that feeling of I'm there. And I love the
This.
stories. I remember the whole testing thing. I remember us talking about it. Like, oh, dang, this is this is crazy. So many of these things that happened that some people would have just said, "Screw it, I'm done. Let's see
Hmm.
if we can get our apartment back in Chicago." I'm not gonna. Most people wouldn't even bought the tickets. They wouldn't have done
Right.
that. They would have waited until they secured funding, had a nest egg. But if you wait for that, you'll never get there. And I love how you just did it.
Hmm.
I mean, a huge jump. Not,
Hmm.
well, let's move to California. Let's get halfway. Then, you know,
That
get our
what's
money
funny
back
about
together and then take the
you know
next jump.
what's funny about that is in February, before the move, my in-laws had us come over to their place to basically try to convince us not to do it.
Oh,
And
wow.
um, my father-in-law was sitting across from me. I will never forget this. This is also part of my story. Um, he's like, well, why don't y'all, do what y'all been talking about? Why don't you just go to Tennessee, go get a homestead out there, and then, do the thing, stack up your money, and then when you have the money, then go to Hawaii. And as he's saying that to me, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that just seems like
Mm-mm.
that's just a middle of, like, that's the craziest middle to spend 5 years to delay what you're already going to do.
Right.
Like, just even on a practical level, that doesn't make any sense to
Right.
me, right?
To invest in that, you'd still be there by then. And you probably never would have
Oh,
gone to Hawaii.
I never would have gone to Hawaii at all, not at all. And,
It'd
but,
be easier for me to drive up to see you guys if you were in Tennessee.
yeah, man, Southwest has sales all the time.
Yeah.
But the the interesting thing about that conversation with my father-in-law was I recognized that he was reflecting my own doubts and worries.
Mm,
He's like, why don't you
yeah.
do the logical, rational thing? And I was like, yeah, but like, and I said to him, I was like, yeah, but this is what God told me because I knew that that's what he could understand. I've
Right.
never said that to anybody in my life. And I said that to him because I knew that's what he could understand. But what I was really saying was, I saw myself. Like I'm not,
Mm,
I'm not doing this because of anything other than I'm literally following vision. Like, scripture says, I go to prepare a place for you, that where I go, there you will be also. So in my mind, I'm just literally walking a bridge of incident to what I saw. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So the the idea to delay it to do the more practical, rational thing was literally the opposite of what I called myself to do. Also, with that is this isn't the first time I made moves like this. Like this is actually kind of before I knew the law, I would already do these type of things. So that's another interesting thing that we could
Yeah.
talk about, which is we're always imagining, we're always
Yeah.
bringing things into light. Um, that's how I moved to New York in a matter of 4 to 6 weeks or something like that, without any money or any prospects of how I was going to do it. It was just one day I get the scholarship, and one day I get the scholarship, and they're like, "Hey, come to our school." I was like, "Yes." I don't know how I'm going to afford it, but I guess I'm moving to New York. So, and it wasn't that I was moving to New York. It was I was at the top of the class. I'm graduating at the top of the class. That's what drove me. This is before I knew the law. But in
Yeah.
my mind, it's 2 years later and I'm at the top of the class.
See,
Right?
you were doing it and didn't realize you. And that's what I love about discovering who we are. And we're always doing this. We've been doing this all along. And you
Hmm.
manifested Neville at that time, you know. And the beauty of that, I know I cut you off, is, but I get so excited because it's not one person that we rely on, one person's teaching. We've been doing this the entire time. And if you look back on your life, you see, oh, well, yeah, I remember I was just thinking about how cool that would be. Or that's what I wanted, and that's exactly what I got. And then we tend to overcomplicate it when we start studying manifesting. And you know, like we need the rules. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, I mean, whether it was that or, you know, even when I went to university, that's how I did university. It's how I manifested Chicago,
Yeah.
how I manifested my wife. Like these are all well, I manifested my wife after learning about the law, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's- um, the thing about learning the law for anybody who's watching and trying to understand the law, it's you're not learning anything new. You're just discovering how the things you've been doing were done. And now
Yeah.
that you're aware of how the things you've been doing are done, you're now aware of how the things that are coming now and in the future are going to come. So,
I like
whatever
that.
it is that you want, as soon as you accept it, it's done. Oh, but you mean I don't have to do anything? It's like, no, you're obviously going to do stuff, but you're not going to be doing stuff from the aspect of I need to go get something. You're doing stuff under the aspect of, well, this is just what I need to be doing. Like, and even the words I just said there, it's so hard to explain until you actually have the experience. But it's already done in my mind means that everything that needs to happen in order for its physical appearance has to happen. So I could even look back on the whole manifesting Hawaii thing and be like, me being upset, me calling my friends, me, reaching out to people, me going into the closet, me being like, oh, is it was all part of the unfolding for that adventure, like for that experience, for whatever it was that it needed. Like
Yeah.
part of that, part of me going on that journey was, man, it made me get closer to my friends that I only knew online. Like
Yeah.
I became closer to you, Mike, and Grant, and Alessandra and Tony, and all these lovely people because of this. Like that's such a blessing because now you guys are good friends of mine that I can always reach out to if I need anything, which I rarely do, but like
We still like to
I
chat, though. We have good
I love to
conversations.
yeah, exactly, and and like I was just talking with Alessandra, about a couple months ago, and she's going through something, and I was so pleased to be there for her because she was there for me, right?
Yeah.
But if I didn't go through what I went through, I wouldn't have reached out to her. Does that make sense? I know
Mm-hmm.
that's a hindsight type of thinking, but like the blessings that come from going
Yeah.
on this adventure of knowing who you are and how we can show up in the world for ourselves. We could even show up as grasshoppers and just reach out to our friends that we see as giants. Like that's fine. It's all imagination anyways, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You look back and you see this, how this instance led to this new thread woven into the tapestry of your story, and how these things you can't, we never know. You look back and you see it like, oh, well, then this happened. And if that hadn't, how it all comes together.
Hmm.
But looking forward, We know what we want. We just accept that, and then we don't have to do the weaving. you
Right.
know, we don't have to worry. And I'm micromanaging
Mm.
myself. That's one of my things I was happy to let go of. I didn't realize what I was doing, but we want to know it. Like we want to hold the needle, and if we try to do that, then we end up. In my case, I end up making it take longer, or seem to take longer, and more painful. Just
Yeah.
angsty, that angsty, tense feeling, because that's that part of me that wants to kind of direct the needle as it's being woven into my story. So
So it's so interesting because I have 2 points. So it's interesting because, we talk about micromanaging. Like, oh, I'm the one who's moving the needle. But then we'll talk about, well, just let go and let God. But then who's God, right? And who's the I who's micromanaging? And like, what's the difference between the two? And blah 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 blah.
yeah,
So this brings me to the second point. You're friends with, I don't really know her that well, but Anila Reddy.
yeah,
I love her because she's like the relaxation queen, right?
right.
So, she makes it seem so easy to just chill and, just let go of the
Yeah,
micromanaging, let go of the forcing, let go of all that stuff. And I'm like, when you think about it, she's right, because if you look in hindsight, didn't we say this earlier? Looking in hindsight, I wish I would have been a little bit more chill. I wish I
right.
would have been. So if that's the case, if that's the case, then right now you should just be chill.
Mm-hmm.
But it
But we
is a
don't want
little.
it.
It's
We don't
so
want
difficult to do it because for me, my excuses for the difficulty of it is it's like, well, I have kids, I have a wife, and they need things from me, and I don't want them to be doing all this stuff, and I don't want to. I just want to just do nothing all day. I really do want to be doing nothing all day, but I have chickens, I
we got
have
to
a
feed the
yeah,
chickens.
I got to feed the chickens, I got to take care of the farm, I got to do all these things. But here's where Anila comes in. Can you relax as you're feeding the chickens?
Ah,
Can you relax as you're walking the bridge of incident? Like, can you do that? And the answer is yes, if you choose to
yeah.
realize that it's like, wait, it's already done. I'm not the one feeding the chickens. I'm the one witnessing this person called Jerry feeding the chickens. And when I come from that place, it's way easier.
Yeah.
Not that feeding chickens is hard, but you use the analogy. Um,
It's
had
because
I,
that mundane, it's a mundane activity, and I've noticed it in my own life. I'm brushing my teeth, but it's in those mundane activities where I would start pushing, reiterating something, and it's force, a lot of force, and I could just be feeding the chickens.
right,
It's when we're busy with something, it's easier to not be concerned with it, but it's the mundane things that we can do mechanically, from memory, brushing our teeth, washing dishes, feeding the chickens. And that's where I used to take those opportunities to to try to force it. And then it became a
mm,
habit. Every time I was brushing my teeth, that's when this was a long time ago, I would start worrying about brushing my teeth. Wait, because that's when I start to worry.
mm.
So I just stopped brushing my teeth.
I was wondering what I was smelling. Um, um, what's interesting about the mind. Now I'm going to get into the mind. So not so much about imagination and who we truly are, but our mind. That is, without a doubt, what needs to be worked on. And and this is where Neville talks about mental diets and all that type of stuff. What is it that you want to be thinking, right? That's really where it boils down to. Why I bring this up is I've started noticing in the last couple of weeks that around 9:30 in the morning, I'm working out in the field and doing all this stuff. around 9:30, I just start having these negative thoughts. Just comes out of nowhere. And I'm like, and I started recognizing, I was like, what is going on? And like, I would check the time. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
nuts. And it tells me something that our mind is, we literally put a set point and we just let it go. And we completely forget that we set our mind up that way. And we just go we just go on about a business
Yeah.
and don't think anything of it. And that's why Neville says to have that uncritical observation of your thoughts and your feelings, right? So once I started
Yeah.
having that, I really started recognizing that. I was like, okay, oh, I'm having that thought. Oh, it's 9:30. I'm reset. And like, I literally just reset because what I'm doing is programming my mind to react in a certain way at 9:30. Nothing, I'm literally out in the field by myself. There's nothing going on external to me that would even trigger it to happen. It's literally a set point in my mind. So I'm changing it as we speak. Just an interesting thought that just came up for me.
Oh, I did it. I had it. Mine was around between 9 and 10 a.m., right around the 2 o'clock hour, 2 p.m., and then again at 5:30 to 6:30. I'm like, what the hell is going on? I started clocking it. Like,
Yeah.
I knew, I could tell you what time it was by the stress I was feeling in my body. And then I stopped looking at the clock. I noticed, like, I'm expecting it. Oh, yeah, it's good. It's 3 o'clock. Like, oh, no. Let's start letting that go.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to notice how I created that habit. And so
There it is.
even when everything was going great, that addiction was still there, that surge. And for me, what I had gotten addicted to was that. So I hear Neville talk about you got to feel that thrill, that relief in your body, and so I took it to the extreme. Like, well, I've got to feel it, and so I got hooked on that. Kind of relief, that feeling. So my body got so hooked on that feeling of relief that
That it would
it
need
started
something
like,
to
hey,
relieve.
come on, I need you to feed that. I need
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
so that had created that need for that surge,
Yeah.
and then to get the release. I'm like, oh, I'm done with that. I'm done
Yeah,
with
yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I agree. Like maybe there is an addiction there, but then I'm also just like,
Oh, I'm not saying you were. It was I
yeah,
had created this addiction to it.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm thinking that's the exact same thing. My body is habituated to reacting this way at this time.
Yeah.
I didn't consciously set it, but I did because I'm literally repeating the same pattern over and over again.
Yeah.
So, and I hear what you're saying about the need for relief requires something to be relieved of,
Right.
right? So, so you would set yourself up just to have the feeling of relief. But then I think about it,
Right.
it's like, well, I mean, we use the bathroom, we poop, you know, maybe that's what that is, right? Maybe it is. I have a friend. I live in Hawaii, so there's a lot of, teachers of different modalities and stuff like that around me. And there's this gentleman who thinks that, these feelings that we have in our body are actually coming to consciousness to be released. And like, it's just, it's our opportunity to allow it to be there, not trying to force it back down, not trying to get rid of it, not trying to do anything other than allow it to be there. And when you allow it to be there, it dissipates on its own. And then
Right.
and as
Yeah.
you do that, which is great,
Why fight it? Fighting it
Wha-
doesn't let
it
it
only
come up and let it
perpetuates
go.
right,
Yeah.
which is like a Sedona method or something like that. Um,
Oh yeah.
but
Is that
yeah,
what that is? Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, I think they're all, I think they're all the same.
it is. Jerry, we're getting short on time, but I want to.
Oh, okay.
Let's talk about that. I'm going to have you back. This isn't our only conversation, so we are going to
Oh.
have you back. We have many hours we can do talking about all of this. So what's something, you have a lot of followers, a lot of folks follow you online, and a lot of people respect you. You're very well respected in this community, in the online manifesting community. So, it's so fun. I'm laughing. A friend of mine asked me the other day, give me one sentence that'll fix my life, that can fix everything in my life. And I was like, anyway, we had an interesting conversation after that. So I'm not going to ask you that, but what's something, like a message, something that you want folks to take away from this interview?
Well, that's a good question. If there was one thing that I would want to impart, I like to think about it like, all right, if I wasn't here, what would I leave for my sons? So I would say that it's a lot easier than you think it is.
Ooh.
If you let
like
it be.
That. Yeah.
If it just let it, well, this is also what I say to my clients. Let it be true.
Mm-hmm.
If you can just let it be true, it is true. So I know we're running out of time, but why I say this, I in the last couple of weeks, I've been going back to fundamentals, just like if I was brand new to manifesting, all this type of stuff, because that's who I like to work with. I like to work with people who are new to the manifesting or Neville and all that stuff. So I'm going back to fundamentals, and I climbed the ladder last month, by the way, and I realized that the difficulty I was having and the difficulty that people who are new to this have is they don't let it be true. It's constantly, yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but what about that? What if I do that? Did I do it wrong? Just let it be true.
Yeah.
And just go with that. Whatever it is that you're looking for, whoever's watching this, whether it's I want the promise, or I want money, or I want the SP, or I want, better health. Can you just, right now, as you're listening to this, let it be true? You ask all these what ifs. What if it's this? What if it's that? What about that? Well, what if it's just true?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Perfect, Jerry. Wow. Thank you for spending some of your time with us. I love you. I love you so much. You're definitely going to come back on here if you're willing to hop back on to Feeling Twisty. I'd love to have you. Where can folks find you?
The best way to find me is on Instagram, human.imagination. That's the best way to find me. You can find me on Facebook, but I'm not really on it that often. I hate Facebook. But I am on Facebook, but the best way to reach me is human.imagination on Instagram.
All right. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Mike. I love you, man.
Love you too. Thank you, Jerry. I love that guy. Well, I'm going to have him back on in the future because we've got a lot more we can talk about. And I want to hear your story so I can share it and share you with the world on Feeling Twisty Conversations. You don't have to be in the manifesting industry, part of that whole community. We've all got beautiful stories to share that give life and blessings to others. So find me at mystory@feelingtwisty.com. And coming up on my next episode of the Feeling Twisty podcast, I think I'm going to be talking about SPs. And check out my new site, feelingtwisty.com. I love you.